If you've got a cardboard box laying around, join me and let's make a book box. Hi, I'm Rachelle. Welcome to Journal Life's Journey. I'll be using cardboard from a package I received along with a variety of craft and mixed media supplies that I already have on hand. I've watched several process videos on creating a book box, but none were an actual tutorial. So I'm somewhat winging it and creating my own version based on what I've been able to learn. I will link to those channels in the description box below. It started out with corrugated cardboard base pieces that are approximately 6 by 9, like a typical handmade journal. I doubled the pieces by gluing two pieces of the same size together for the front, back, and box sides. I used white glue to attach the sides to the book cover. When I create another book box, I will use hot glue instead. It's faster, it dries almost instantly. For the rounded spine, I used the corrugation as a guide for curving the cardboard, and that was for the first layer. For the second layer, because the corrugation was going against the curve, I scored the cardboard to round it. Again, in this case, for future boxes, I will use hot glue instead of the white glue. It holds and catches faster than a wet glue. I wasn't sure how wide to make the spine pieces, so I ended up trimming the second layer a bit. To help hold some of the pieces together while the glue dries, I used brown craft tape. The tape and other tools and supplies I used for this project will be linked in the description box below. Once I got the spine and the sides of the book box in place, I used thin strips of chipboard to cover the exposed corrugated edges around the top edge of the box. Unfortunately, because this is a fairly large project for my usual recording setup, I tend to wander out of frame. I will try to adjust my setup for larger projects like this in the future. I cut up two lunch bags, just paper bags, the lightweight lunch bags, to create collage or paper mache style pieces to cover the edges of the box sides as well as the spine using a diluted PVA or white glue mixture. After dry fitting the cover piece, I used the craft tape to hold it in place. To further attach the cover, I used fabric medical tape with some added glue to make sure it stays in place. Because the tape is only about 1 inch wide, I put down extra layers to make sure it doesn't lift. If you don't have fabric medical tape, a piece of fabric works great. I repeat the process for the seam on the inside of the box as well. Using the paper bag pieces, I cover the fabric tape, being careful not to overlap the fold area. I'm using 1/2 inch strips of chipboard to mimic the raised ridges of vintage books. I spritz them with a little water to help mold them to the rounded shape of the spine. Here I'm adding modeling paste to the outside edges of the box. I start the process of making the edges look like pages by scraping the end or edge of the paperclip through the modeling paste. Moving on to the inside of the box, I'm using a stencil I created using my Cricut and modeling paste to add a design on the inside bottom of the box. Also using a stencil that I recently hauled from Shein, I'll link to that video in the iCard up above, and some modeling paste, I add a script design to the inside cover of the book box. To add some texture to the outside of the book and to loosely mimic leather, I'm using the extra layers or backings from napkins and my glue and water mixture to cover the outside of the book. I'm using layered 1/2 inch strips of chipboard and book corners to create a frame for the front cover. And here I'm using some flat back pearls to add detail to the raised edges on the spine. Because the book corners are metal, I'm using Fabri-Tac to adhere them to the frame corners on the cover. Using another stencil that I created and cut with my Cricut, I'm adding a skull design in the frame on the cover with modeling paste. I want to add a little more texture and design inside the frame, and because I don't have molds or clay to create them, I'm stenciling with modeling paste on tracing paper. Then I can tear apart or cut apart the tracing paper and use glue to add it in the places that I want it on the cover inside the frame. Unfortunately, because the glue that I used had a high water content, it caused the tracing paper to wrinkle, which added more texture and somewhat obscured the design from the stencils. So if I use this technique again, I will use a glue that is not water-based, such as Fabri-Tac. I added the tracing paper pieces to the front cover and the spine. And to add more interest to the frame, I added 3 flat back pearls on the top and bottom of the frame. Now it's finally time to start painting. This is what I've been waiting for. So using a black matte acrylic paint, it's a craft paint from Walmart, I cover the entire book inside and out. This is my base coat. Then all of the design and painting will go on top of this coat. I left the book to dry, and even though I have quite a few places that were missed with the black paint, once I start adding the other colors and layers, those areas will be covered. Using a combination of 3 different brown paints, I attempt to make the cover of the book look like a vintage old worn leather. I paint the frame with a lighter brown color, and I also go over it with my water and glue mixture, which will allow the frame to have a tacky surface. I want this tacky surface so that I can add gold foil flakes. After brushing away the excess gold foil flakes, it's time to paint the faux page look on the edges of the book. I'm using an antique white color as the base, and I will build on that with other similar but darker colors to give the faux paper edges a vintage look. The overall look that I'm going for with this book box is old grunge. I'm using a dry brush to go against the grain of the faux pages so that the black base that I painted still shows through. This adds depth and gives the illusion of spaces between the pages. Mixing some of the brown paints with the antique white, I start adding depth and the appearance of age to the pages. While the sides dry, I'm back to working on the front cover and filling the insides of the frame with black paint. I decided I wanted this area to stand out and be a different color from the rest of the book. I also added some black and dark brown to the frame to give it more of a grungy look. I'm also adding more black paint to the overall cover with a dry brush to deepen the color of the faux leather. Using a gold gilding wax from Sizzix, I'm giving the frame another layer of shimmer. I also add the gold gilding wax to the skull and the stenciled area inside the frame, as well as the decorative pieces on the spine. I also use more black and dark brown paint as well as gold paint to clean up around the raised ridges on the spine and also around the frame edges. Because I was not satisfied with the gold inside the frame, I finally took the plunge and decided to go with a different color. I chose a dark red and painted over everything inside the frame except the skull. The skull is supposed to be the main focal point on the cover, but it didn't stand out enough and it looked a little muddled. So I decided to use the stencil design and my Cricut to cut out several of the same image with a heavyweight cardstock. I glued the die cuts together to create one thick skull piece that I could use on the cover to add dimension and depth. I painted the skull piece with gold paint as a base. Then I added glue and gold foil flakes for additional shimmer. I used a stiff brush to remove the excess flakes. While the skull piece was drying, I used the gold paint to dry brush over the stencil design inside the box. And even though I did not like the look of the paint, I moved to the script area on the inside cover with the gold paint. It didn't look much better. So I painted over the gold with black paint so that I could try something different. While the black paint was drying, I attached the skull piece to the front cover using glossy accents. Not only does it create a glossy look on elements, you can also use it as an adhesive. And then I placed some heavy glue containers on top to hold the piece flat and in place. Then I use the gilding wax to lightly go over the tracing paper stenciled pieces in the corners. I also use gilding wax on the inside stenciling instead of the gold paint. I think the results of the wax were a little better than the gold paint. I'm still not completely happy with the script area on the inside cover, but this is a learning process and I've kind of learned what to do and what not to do on a lot of the steps in this process. After completing some touch-up work on the cover and spine, I'm ready to seal the project. I use a clear coat spray, which I will link in the description box below. This was to finish the cover and inside the box. I did not record that spraying process. I was outside. I had the book in my spray box. If you want to see me spraying, I do have a video on my other channel, SCRAPCRAFTASTIC, where I was spraying some pages for covers for another project. So if you want to see that, I'll link to that video in the description box below as well. And if you would like to see that step in future videos, please let me know in the comments below. So here is the finished book box. I'm really happy with the way it came out. I learned several lessons, what to do, what not to do with this project. And I will be making more in the future. I have several ideas of styles of book boxes that I would like to make. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that. I really like how the clear coat, which is a semi-gloss, gave the cover a nice sheen. So it does have a vintage old leather look to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. So will you be trying a book box? I mean, the possibilities of themes and designs is pretty much endless. Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and I'll holler at y'all next time. Bye.